asked the crowd, have we made any promises around automation that we did not fulfill? And almost everyone in the room raised their hand, right? Because we've made a lot of promises to our users, whether it's our suppliers, our stakeholders, that we were going to quote unquote automate a process. And yes, we've had some success there, but did we get all the way to bright? No, right? And so now we're going to come back out to that same user base and say, hey, we're going to automate your process and it's going to be easier. Are they going to trust us?
Welcome to another episode of Procurement Pulse. Today with us, Amanda Prochaska. Amanda, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Jumping right in, can you give our listeners a quick background about who you are, your journey, and where you are today?
Yeah, like most procurement people, I did not study to become a procurement professional. In fact, during college, I had no idea what procurement even was. I studied international political economics, didn't want to go into the government, found a buyer role, and I'm like, who doesn't like buying things? So I fell into procurement and I've never looked back. So started as a buyer, like I said, but then quickly transitioned over into more of a transformation type role. So was leading large scale transformations, whether digital or like merger and acquisition work or insourcing and outsourcing. I also got to open 2 properties at MGM Resorts and lead the entire supply chain, which was super cool. So I was loving the work that I did. And I loved like being able to be creative and seeing the impact that I was having. But as I journeyed throughout my career about 7 years ago, I started realizing that we were getting some really great investments into procurement from a digital standpoint, but a lot of the leaders were coming back to me and saying like things like, well, we didn't get the ROI, or it didn't truly transform our organization. And the hardest part of that is getting people to change the ways that they work. So, and that could be the skill sets, it could be the organization, it could be clarifying policy and creating a user-friendly process. So I decided, and my husband thinks that I'm kind of crazy at times, but I decided to go try to fix it. And I knew that if I didn't go out on my own, I would always like 10, 20 years from now, wonder what would have happened if I went forward with it. So I knew I didn't want to have those regrets. So I decided to leave a perfectly great job, actually my dream job at MGM, and start Wonder Services 7 years ago. And now that we're helping people do their digital transformations, be more successful in their adoption of that change and their transformation that they're trying to create. And then over the last 2-ish years, it kind of transformed into digital transformation plus AI readiness, AI op models, helping organizations kind of go into this new AI era that we're all trying to figure out right now.
Yeah, so many questions on that, because I've certainly seen a lot of what you're describing coming from having started in procurement in a large organization as well. But first, I mean, the perks at MGM must have been great.
Oh my gosh. Like getting the hotel rooms and everything like that was amazing. But my favorite part of that at the time at my level, I could comp meals at any MGM resort as many times during the day as I wanted. And with as many people as I wanted, I just had to pay tip, right, for the servers. Yeah. So we've had some glorious meals at MGM properties. But I think the coolest part, I mean, that the team was fantastic there. I built a team of 55 and it was, but some of the hardest work was opening those 2 properties. It was fun because we were all aligned. We're all kind of linked together with one mission, but it was complicated and
which ones did you open
at the same time? I opened MGM National Harbor. And I also opened MGM Springfield. So worked on both of those openings. And then I also did several restaurant openings, was involved in like the Park MGM renovation and the Eataly opening and stuff like that.
Did MGM go through the transition where they now don't own the buildings anymore, where it's all separate? Were you there when that happened?
So they had a REIT that was created, and so some of the buildings we were leasing back from the REIT. So that transition happened. But from an operations standpoint, it didn't really make too much of a difference in the day-to-day. It was more of a financial play.
Yeah. I saw a lot of the casinos go through that, and kind of similar to Red Lobster, right? Where they rent the building out to themselves, and I'm not sure if it's working out too great for them.
That would be above my pay grade for sure.
Yeah. All right. Jumping into what you said about technology, the pushback you're getting when trying to roll out technology and getting people to adapt to new technology. And then a lot of times getting the impression that it didn't really change the way we operate. And I've certainly seen that, right? Where do you think the problem is? Is it over-promising by the companies creating the technology? Is it users not using the technology right? A mix of both? Where does it fall short?
Okay. So, and this might be a little bit like edgy, so just FYI. So, from my experience, what I have observed is that a lot of times when there's a technology being deployed, a system integrator comes into the mix, right? So, it's a consulting firm that is there to quote unquote help transform your organization with this digital implementation. And what I kept on seeing over and over and over again is that they were really, really great at deploying a technology, getting it configured, getting it integrated, getting it tested. But where the hole still was, and where I thought there was a disconnect between the leaders, like the CPOs or whoever was running the COE at the time, and the SI, is that I felt like the procurement leaders were relying on the SI to transform their organization. And what they really got was an implemented solution. And I actually had an SI once. This was several years ago when I first started Wonder. Sat me down, and I was pushing a little bit because I was like, this is not going well. What is going on? And he looked right at me, I kid you not, and he's like, it is my responsibility to get this implementation or this technology up and running. Whether it works or not is not my problem. And I was like, that was my light bulb moment. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many people relying on these SIs to do that true transformation. And I'm sure there are SIs that do it, but I saw enough of a gap where I was like, this needs to change, right? We need people that understand procurement, that understand business processes and how to relate to the stakeholders and how to truly drive the change at the ground level within the users. And sometimes it's like 6,000, 10,000, 12,000 users. There's a lot of people that we need to engage to truly get this change to work. And a lot of that just frankly was not happening.
Yeah. So it's a lack of training, or where do you think the biggest disconnect was?
I seriously think like that people got so focused on the technology aspects that they forgot the people aspect. So yes, it could be training, it could be user process, it could be lack of right data that needs to flow in and out of these systems. Sometimes it could be a lack of policy or clarity of policy. I've even walked into organizations where they deployed a technology and they didn't even have an organization to run it, right? So there's that aspect. Yeah, great, you have a technology, but if you don't have buyers that are managing purchase orders, like I don't know how that is going to work. Or a sourcing team that can look at the data and insights within the technology to go source a better contract or do an RFP. So there's a myriad of different things that could go wrong. But when we go into an implementation up front, we look at 8 different aspects of change. One of them is the technology. There are 7 other levers that we look at to make sure that the leaders are truly planning for success and have a really robust way of getting to that ROI. And now I can give you an example here. So a lot of the source pay solutions that were being deployed, let's just say several years ago, the number one value creation was savings, right?
Yeah.
And it's not savings from headcount reduction, it was savings from strategic sourcing. Well, a lot of people were like, hey, we're going to deploy XYZ and it's deployed, yay. And then their sourcing behaviors didn't change. And so they never obtained that value. So sometimes it has nothing to do with like the actual like usage of the system, like the core day-to-day apps. It's like, what do you do with it now? That seems to fall apart.
Yeah. Are there certain tools or systems that you feel are easier to roll out and to adopt than others? Is there something where you're saying, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's an interesting intersection that we're at right now. I'll just say it that way because a lot of new technology is coming out that I'm super excited about. If you think about kind of our journey from a procure tech standpoint, and obviously we've had ERPs, and the ERPs really run a lot of the direct procurement side. But on the indirect side, we had this evolution from like Ariba originally, and then Coupa was Gen 2, if you want to call it that. And then Now you have all of this intake and orchestration tool, which is quote unquote supposed to be easier for people to use, although we're seeing mixed results on that. And now you have your AI, agentic AI layer that's coming out with some new players. I think the more agentic we go, the easier it's going to be, only because the agentic layer is more intellectual, if you will. They understand the policies, the processes,
Right.
and you don't have to have 10,000 users understanding all of that nuance. They just go in and use the agent, and the agent can follow the purchasing process that you've created or the sourcing process. So I think we're going to get there over in this new generation of capability, but that's all. I always go back to tech is cool, but it usually comes down to the people, right? It comes down to the leadership, their willingness to deploy it, their willingness to understand it and get their people engaged around it. There's a lot of fear around AI right now. And so it's still going to come down to the people and their willingness to adopt it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's
Mhm.
people who have been there a long time, who have done it a certain way 20 years, they're used to a system, they're used to a process, so that change can be challenging.
It can be. And here's the okay. So I was just at a conference earlier this week and I was presenting and I asked the crowd, have we made any promises around automation that we did not fulfill? And almost everyone in the room raised their hand, right? Because we've made a lot of promises to our users, whether it's our suppliers, our stakeholders, that we were going to quote unquote automate a process. And yes, we've had some success there, but did we get all the way to bright? No, right? And so now we're going to come back out to our that same user base and say, hey, we're going to automate your process and it's going to be easier. Are they going to trust us?
Right, and they've been told that 3 or 4 times throughout their career, and it's never
Yes.
quite worked, and they always feel like it's made things harder and not
Yep.
easier, and so they're rightfully skeptical, right? And it's the question is, and I think AI can make it more intuitive, right? And it can do a lot of the
Mhm.
training. The training can be built in, right? And I think that's one of the great things about AI. If you have questions now, AI should be able to explain the way you should be doing it, maybe what you're doing wrong,
Yeah.
or give that built-in training, right? Where you don't have to go sit through a training and then try to remember what the training told you 2 or 3 hours ago, right? In those tools. And I think in the good AI tools that I have used, a lot of times you can just go in and ask, hey, what do I need to do next? Right. And it
Right.
kind of gives you a step-by-step
Yes.
instruction and guide.
The interesting thing about training is that you're absolutely right about the AI. Like the how to training, I think is going to not need to be as focused on moving forward, like how to execute a certain process. However, the behavior training, the soft skill training that procurement's going to need to do, because like if let's just say more gets automated, and that's still a question of if, but let's just say it does, then what is procurement going to be doing moving forward? And it's a lot of those skills around relationship building, trusted advisor, understanding strategy. There will be a technical aspect of understanding how to manage AI and the agents within procurement, but it's going to be a lot more soft skills. And I talk about like the people who can truly lead with love moving forward as more technology comes our way. Those are the people that are going to really shine and stand out moving forward.
What do you think that level of automation, if it does come, will do to entry-level roles?
I just had this debate with someone just yesterday. It actually, it's honestly scaring me a little bit because I do believe a lot of those entry level roles could be automated with this new technology. However, from a smart leadership standpoint, is that the best choice to make?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Where
what
do
is
your
the
next leaders come from if you don't have entry-level roles?
right? And how do they learn the ropes and how do they understand that the agent's giving them the right results if they've never done the work before? So it was interesting. I was talking to someone who is a people leader in procurement, fairly successful, and then I had a professor from a university in the conversation. And so it was interesting to kind of hear both sides because the professor's there to help create that generation, right, of new entries into procurement. But I think they're like most of what I'm going to say here, it really comes down to the leadership and leadership understanding that they do still need some entry level roles. It's just going to be a question of how many, right? And how do they structure that?
Do you think there will be a new type of entry-level role that doesn't exist today that's much more focused on AI?
If I were in university right now, I would expect that. Like, I think
It
that
won't be a buyer anymore, entry-level role where you go in and just 90% of your day just plays POs, right? Those entry level roles are going to look different.
Yeah, and they're going to be probably managing the agents that are doing the buying,
Yeah.
right? So understanding what buying looks like, being fairly well, like understanding if the agent is working correctly or not, how to manage that agent to detect if it's working correctly or not. That the idea, I think how organizations are going to look is you're going to have like a managing agent, and that managing agent is going to be managing 20 different agents on your behalf. So the ability to work with your managing agent to understand how it's managing too is going to be a critical skill, especially for those entry level roles.
Yeah. And I've had this conversation on this podcast and on podcasts I have been on. And I think in my mind, there's two ways companies can go with AI. I think way number one is they're going to replace as much as possible with AI and keep the status quo, right? They're saying, okay, what we're doing today, we just have AI do. We lay off the people, we run more
Yeah.
efficient, we increase profits. I think the second way, and obviously the much more interesting way, is for companies to recognize we can utilize AI. Our purchasing team, if we apply it to purchasing, now has 30% more capacity.
Yeah.
What are we doing with that capacity? What have we never been able to do before? What are some of the tasks and the challenges we just never had time to look at? Could be the bottom 20% of your spend, right? The tail that nobody's ever looked at. It
Yep.
could be doing a much better job of vendor scorecards, because how many do you really do, right? You do your best 5, 10 vendors and the rest falls behind, right? So and I think
Yep.
it could be for entry level roles too. They could be coming in and saying, okay, we know you can manage your day to day, or what used to be the day to day, in 50, 60% of your time now. Go and explore with the other 30% time how you can bring value to the organization. I think it's going to be much more of a green field, right? Because companies don't know yet what the capabilities could be if they utilize that capacity somewhere else. So I think it's the people that are going to be successful are the people who can work cross-functional, who can communicate well, who can
Mhm.
lead, who can make a business case to the organization and say, hey, we have capacity now that we didn't used to have. This is what we can do, and this is how we can bring more value to the organization.
100% agree. Just again, I was at a very large conference over the last few days, and I was chatting with someone yesterday, and he was like, it's going to point out who is really in a crunch for maybe their business model is not growing. Those are the people that are going to lay off people and look at this as a cost savings opportunity. The people who are in looking for growth, who are going to accelerate into the market and really be the next market leaders, are going to look at this like a way to accelerate their business and utilize their people in more innovative ways. So he believes there's going to be this chasm in the market, and it's going to be super clear who's going to fall into each of those buckets, which was really insightful. I always look at, and I think you were spot on your comments, like we've talked about doing a lot of stuff in procurement, and we say that we do some of this stuff in procurement, but in reality, are we really getting after it? SRM comes to the like top of my mind, like really doing detailed understanding of what our supply base, maybe going in deeper into our supply base to truly have
Yeah.
strategic relationships with them, co-innovate. Like
Yeah.
there's all kinds of possibility that we could do if we can unlock that time, and then we can upskill our people to do those tasks.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that the companies who are laying off will course correct and maybe quickly see, right, that hopefully this is not the way to go, because otherwise I do think the next generation, especially those entry level roles, because they can be automated. There's no question about it that those
Right.
roles can be automated. It's just very short sighted to do it because, like you said, nobody understands the business anymore. Nobody has learned the business, and
Mm-hmm.
where do you go from there?
Yeah, and I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old at home. I just always think about like what is the leadership decisions that we're making right now are going to form their future, right? And so there's like a ton of accountability that we have to understand that. And that's what I've been like on a mission lately, to talk to as many leaders as possible, for them to build their first agent, because I feel like a lot of leaders are just thinking this is theory still, and it's not. It's a reality. You can build an agent today. Almost anyone can. It's fairly easy to do. You don't have to wait for IT to do it, right? Like you can do that today. And once you do that, you understand what potential it can unlock.
So where do you start with that? Where would you go and build your first agent?
Okay. So, well, we've done some silly stuff. Like we had a whole bunch of leaders on a call, and we built a recipe management for home
Right.
agent that can look at what's in your pantry and in your fridge, give you some different options, recipes, and it
Okay.
gives you a shopping list. So, like that's super silly. But on Sunday, I built in front of 500 people. I built a geopolitical risk monitor agent that used only public information. So you didn't have to upload anything internally, but it was like category specific. So you could say, hey, what's my geopolitical risk across the globe or in these certain regions for steel products or
Right.
for crude oil or whatever you're managing, which is super easy because you can have it run on a certain basis, give you recommendations, and you don't even have to integrate it with your own data. So for those companies that are like, oh, but my data, like I can't release my data, that was all neutral, if you will. So there's a lot of really great agents out there that are doing work in the PO confirmation space, like on the procure to pay side. It's always been a pain point. There's ones that are doing contract review, to understand like your
I mean, I'm
contract
I'm doing
versus
that, right?
payroll.
I just sold a house, and the first thing I did when they sent me, because we're for sale by owner, the first thing I
Yeah.
did with the contract is run it through AI, right? And tell me, hey,
Yes.
is there anything that's not standard language? Is there anything that I should be looking out for? Do you have any recommendation? Then sure enough, it came back and said earnest money was low, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. So here's what I learned though, over the last couple of weeks. I've been traveling a lot, talking to a lot of people. One of the things that I think are holding people back is a fear. They don't realize it's now. It's a little bit like they're a little bit anxious about it, and they don't think they can build one. So that's one camp. But then the other camp is IT is not giving us the access to build, right? We don't have the licenses. We don't have the ability to do this within our four walls. And I feel blessed because I'm a business owner, right? Like I can play with all this stuff and not be constrained, but understand in these bigger organizations that there's maybe political posturing, there could
yeah.
be costs associated with it. So what I've been telling people is try to build like a 4 to 6 people team that is focused on building your first agent. It's the people that do the work, but a person on that team is the IT person that has a license,
And
right?
right,
So,
I mean, it's a huge advantage for those smaller and middle market companies, because it just takes large organizations so much
so
time to implement any of this because of political
mhm.
licensing, right? And getting, so I think it's a huge advantage for those smaller companies to pivot a lot quicker and definitely get an advantage over those larger organizations, right?
Yeah. Oh, I actually wrote an article at the beginning of the year. I think I did a video on it too, where I was like, the people that are going to move faster are like your 1 person to 10 person procurement team, right? Like, because they're getting pressure to do more. They don't have a lot of resources. They don't have a lot of budget. They don't have a lot of constraints, probably, and they can move forward. High growth tech startups probably are going to go faster just because they're more tech enabled and they don't have,
You would think so, but
yes,
I know some people who work at Google, and Google has gotten into the same. I mean, they're not high growth, right? But
right,
some of those
right.
big tech firms, I think they had Gemini sitting there long before ChatGPT ever came out, and they were just worried about the public perception of an AI tool and AI getting it wrong and Gemini getting it wrong. So they were sitting on it for a long time
Wow.
because they were worried about the repercussions before finally ChatGPT came out, and Google said, okay, we're going to have
We
to,
gotta go.
we got to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's still I think the slower ones probably to the market are those huge procurement teams that have a lot of bureaucracy, have a lot of people to get involved, maybe more politics and all of that. Highly regulated industries, I think, are going to be slower. I think
Yeah.
pharma and the like, where they have a lot of regulations that they're trying to understand and get through. So
But I
it'll be
think
interesting
those,
to see how it
especially,
plays
right,
out.
with the regulations, I think AI could be great for those, right? Food and beverage, food and drug,
Yeah.
where you have a lot of like the government, right, with their very rigid procurement process that's very time consuming. I think in those areas, especially, I think AI could really shine and make the process so much easier.
I 100% agree, but whether they can get there or not is the question.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have touched on it a little bit. What skills do you think are going to be most relevant and most future proof in an AI enabled supply chain?
Yeah, I immediately go to soft skills. So, ability to influence, ability to build trusted relationships, ability to communicate, tell stories, understand strategy and build it into your strategies within procurement. I think understanding how to build strategic relationships and co-innovate with suppliers is going to become huge. And from a leadership standpoint, I truly mean this, leading with love, like really understanding the emotional and personal connections that we can have with between people and that community that we can build, because as more and more of our lives become technical, it becomes cold and there's a void, right? Like, and we already have loneliness issues today. We already have quote unquote burnout issues. More people feel like they're burnt out, whether they are or not, but they feel that way. I worry about that getting worse as human interaction continues to decrease. So those people who think about that differently, can interact with people, really have that empathy and that authenticity, I think are going to shine from a leadership standpoint.
On the technical skills, do you think
Yes.
generalists or specialists are going to be more valuable going forward?
Generalist.
Because you can get that specialized knowledge from AI just so much quicker. It used to take years and years to get that knowledge, and now really you can get that knowledge so much quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think of like, I remember a couple of years ago, I was like reading some job descriptions and it was like, you need 15 years of corn buying experience. And I'm like, well, like, do you now? Like, I mean, yeah, of course it would be nice to have, like, just for someone to have that experience, but do you need to have it now?
And I think the important part in that, right? Same, we
Yeah,
see it all the time with steel or other commodities. I think the part that's still valuable is the relationships you have with the vendors. You know the
yes,
vendors. It's not the knowledge about the product anymore, because that product knowledge I can get it in 10 minutes, right? I can have AI give me all the different steel variants and tell me which steel I need for what, right? I don't need that. But the vendor relationships I've built over the years is still the valuable piece of it.
yeah, understanding the nuance in the business, understanding what incentivizes the supplier to be successful, like all of that stuff goes into that relationship bit for
Yeah.
sure.
And I think that's the part, right? When you say, okay, we need somebody with that experience, that's really the piece that you want to bring into your organization, is somebody who has those relationships, somebody who understands that, but it's not the technical expertise that you're looking to bring in anymore.
Right, but think about what that unlocks though. Like instead of going from like corn buying experience for the last 15 years, you could have someone that's worked in that industry, maybe on the sales side or maybe in finance or maybe, at one of your suppliers in a role that could fulfill that role too, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be like a procurement person
And,
anymore.
and we do see that a lot of our
Yeah.
clients are pivoting to candidates from other industries, because I think supply chain has had a talent shortage. I think they said that when I started in supply chain 15 plus years ago, we had a talent
Yeah.
shortage, and it's never really gone away. So we have companies that pull from engineering, that pull from sales, that pull from all different fields now, because they know, okay, they understand our industry. We have it in mining. They know what mining looks like. It's hectical. It's not when a lot of times we see that in construction and mining, those procurement organizations still operate differently. It's more, they're still in the transition process from being tactical to becoming a strategic
Yeah.
procurement function, and it's not a mature supply chain. So there's a lot of project work, there's a lot of one-offs, there's a lot of things that right streamlined category management. So they need people with different skill sets. They need people that can inform themselves about the products that they're buying now, but really the skill set they need is a different one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually have a question for you because this has been on my mind lately, and maybe we could have a conversation about it. Full-time resources versus contracted resources, and like independent contractors coming in to fulfill a need. Or what are you seeing in the market right now around that?
I mean, it was almost impossible a couple of years ago to get somebody to take a contract, right? Because if there were people who loved doing those contracts. They wanted a new contract, they liked the challenge, and they did contracts because that's how they like to operate. They like to be them somewhere for a year or two, fix something, and then move on. They don't ever
Right.
want to be in that in that maintenance stage where they get bored.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are still out there, right? But most people were looking for more, or are looking for more steady, predictable work where they don't have to worry about what comes 12 months from now. So getting those people into contract roles, they do it if they have to. I would say the majority of candidates we work with, but it's not something they want to do.
Okay. And people are still hiring, like, is the mix from a hiring standpoint still very much focused on full-time roles?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I know someone asked me that the other day and I was like, oh, that's an interesting, because they were thinking about like the op model around AI and is it going to shift more to contracted versus full-time? And I was like, oh, I really haven't even thought about it.
Honestly, and we have one client who's hiring for a director of strategic sourcing, director of category management, who has AI as a requirement for the role. They're utilizing AI to set up RFQs, run RFQs, and analyze them. Nobody else we have worked with so far has had AI as any point in their job description, job requirements, or something they're even looking for. So
Okay.
I think adoption is right. We've had a lot of people who said, right, we've had a form of AI in procurement for a long time, right? It's those algorithms that predict demand, right? That can do the PO matching, things like that. So I think what's different now is that generalized large language models that can kind of be right. AI has been there in like those niche instances where it made sense, and I think people are still trying to figure out how this new generation of AI can fit and help their business.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It's that transition from conceptual to reality.
Well, I think this is a great point to end. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I'm glad that we were able to talk about contracted versus full time because I was super curious about that. And it's just I love that you're doing this podcast because the world is shifting very, very quickly at least from a technology standpoint. And I always say, the people are going to be the catalyst of this. Like, how does it happen? What does it look like for the next generation of leaders? And how do we actually use this as a way to grow versus a way to cut costs? So I'm glad that we covered all of that ground.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And where can people find you and your company?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. Look up Amanda Prochaska. I'm out there. I post almost on a daily basis, if not more. So I'm very active out on LinkedIn. You can also find more information about Wonder Services at wonderservices.net. And I also have a YouTube channel under Wonder Services too.
Awesome. Fantastic. So much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.